Not the news clip, not the recap, the actual FBI-released doorbell camera footage from Nancy Guthrie's front porch. 44 seconds, that is all the FBI had to work with. 44 seconds of a masked figure standing at the front door of an 84-year-old woman's home at 1:47 in the morning. Most people watched that footage once. They said, "Okay, masked guy, creepy, moving on." I watched it 47 times. And on the 14th viewing, I stopped at one specific frame, timestamp 018. There is something in that frame that changes the entire picture of this case. Not a theory, not speculation, a documented, verifiable physical detail that connects that masked figure to a specific man in Tucson, Arizona. A man with a documented criminal record. A man who has spent 19 years playing in a band with the last person to see Nancy Guthrie alive. A man named Dominic Evans. By the time this video is over, you are not going to be asking whether the FBI matched that footage. You are going to be asking why it took this long. This is Brian Records. This channel exists to go through evidence carefully, factually, and without flinching. Every source I use is linked in the description below. Go check it yourself. That is how we do things here. Now let us get into it. February 10th, 2026. FBI Director Kash Patel held a press conference. He released still images and a short video clip pulled from the doorbell camera at Nancy Guthrie's home in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona. The footage showed a single masked figure, dressed entirely in black, ski mask, nitrile gloves, an Ozark Trail 25-litre backpack, a handgun holstered at the waist. That figure stood on Nancy Guthrie's front porch at 1:47 in the morning of February 1st, 2026. Most outlets ran the footage for 30 seconds and moved on to the next story. Here is what most outlets did not tell you. That footage should not exist at all. Nancy Guthrie's Nest camera system did not have an active cloud subscription. The cameras were installed, they were powered on, they could detect motion and send alerts to a phone, but they were not storing continuous footage to the cloud. There was no saved recording to pull. The cameras were essentially expensive-looking props sitting on the wall of her home. The FBI had to partner directly with Google to recover residual data from back-end servers, data that had not been fully overwritten yet, data that Google's own engineers had to dig into specifically for this investigation. Think about what that means. Whoever planned this operation knew those cameras were not recording. They knew that walking onto that porch would not produce footage that investigators could immediately pull the next morning. They planned around a camera system they believed was useless. And they were almost right. Almost. The FBI got 44 seconds back from the digital grave. And inside those 44 seconds is enough physical information to build a profile that points directly at one specific person. When the FBI analyzed the doorbell footage, they did not just enhance the image and post it online. They applied reverse infrared technology. That process amplifies heat signatures and light differentials to pull out physical details that are invisible to the naked eye in standard footage. What came out of that process was specific. Here is the official physical description the FBI released on February 12, 2026. Male, 5'9" to 5'10", average build, black moustache and goatee visible through the openings in the ski mask. Stop right there. The suspect kept the mask on the entire time, And yet the FBI could still describe his facial hair, because the ski mask had eye holes and a mouth opening. And through those openings, under infrared enhancement, the dark hair of a moustache and a goatee was visible. That is not a generic description. A black moustache and a goatee narrows the field considerably. But it gets more specific. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente reviewed the footage publicly. He identified what he believed to be a tattoo or a distinctive marking on the suspect's right wrist, visible in specific frames where the glove had ridden up slightly during movement. Right wrist, visible marking. Now hold all 4 of those data points in your head at the same time. 5'9" to 5'10", average build, black moustache and goatee, distinctive marking on the right wrist. Hold those 4 points, because now I need to tell you about Dominic Aaron Evans. Dominic Aaron Evans is 48 years old. He lives in the Tucson area. He works as an elementary school teacher, and since 2007 he has been the drummer in a band called Early Black. The bassist in that band is a man named Tommaso Cioni. Tommaso Cioni is the husband of Annie Guthrie. Annie is Nancy Guthrie's eldest daughter. That makes Tommaso Cioni Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law. And that makes Dominic Evans the 19-year musical partner of the last known person to see Nancy Guthrie alive. Let me be precise about something right now, and I'm going to come back to this throughout this video. Law enforcement has not officially named Dominic Evans as a suspect or a person of interest. I want to be clear about that. Everything I am about to show you comes from public records, documented facts, FBI-released evidence, and named expert sources. You are going to look at what I show you and make your own judgment. Now, back to the 4 data points, 5'9" to 5'10". Dominic Evans is approximately 5'9", average build. Multiple publicly available photographs and performance videos show Evans at an average build, black moustache and goatee. In those same photographs and performance videos, Evans has been documented with a black moustache and goatee, distinctive marking on the right wrist. In performance footage from Early Black that is available online, a marking is visible on Evans's right wrist. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente described the marking he saw in the Doorbell footage as consistent with what independent researchers identified on Evans's wrist in that band footage. Not one match, not 2 matches. Every single data point in the FBI's official physical description of the suspect maps onto Dominic Aaron Evans, every single one. Now here is where it gets deeply uncomfortable. Public records are public for a reason. The Pima County Judicial Database is accessible to anyone. And inside that database, under the name Dominic Evans, there are documented felony entries: burglary, robbery, theft, embezzlement, DUI. I want to stop on the first 2 words and make sure you understand exactly what they mean under Arizona law. Burglary is unlawful entry into a structure with the intent to commit a crime inside. Robbery is the taking of property from a person through force or the direct threat of force. Read those definitions again slowly. Unlawful entry into a structure. Confrontation of a person. Taking property from them by force. Now read the description of what happened inside Nancy Guthrie's home on February 1st at 1:47 in the morning. Someone entered that home unlawfully. Someone confronted an 84-year-old woman. Someone took her by force. The skill set required to do what was done to Nancy Guthrie is documented in Pima County Court records under the name of the man whose physical description matches every single point of the FBI's official profile. But here is the detail that should stop you cold. Evans has documented felony convictions. His name is in those court records right now. Anyone can look it up. And yet, neither of the two DNA profiles recovered from this crime scene matched a single profile in the FBI's CODIS database. CODIS contains 19 million known offender profiles. 19 million people. Neither profile matched anyone. For a person with documented felony convictions, the absence from CODIS has a specific legal explanation. Arizona's DNA collection laws have been amended multiple times over the years. If Evans's convictions were entered before the state implemented mandatory DNA collection for his specific categories of offence, or if any of his cases were resolved through plea agreements that did not trigger automatic DNA submission, he could have multiple felony entries in the county system and remain completely invisible to the federal database. Documented criminal record. 0 DNA on file anywhere the FBI can access. That combination is the forensic equivalent of a ghost. A ghost who looks exactly like the person standing on Nancy Guthrie's porch at 1:47 in the morning. 2007. Dominic Evans and Tommaso Cioni did not grow up together. They did not go to school together. They found each other through a classified ad in the Tucson Weekly. Tommaso posted a listing. Evans responded. They found a guitarist named Walter Gonsalves through Craigslist. In late 2009, the three of them walked into Loveland Studios in Tucson and recorded their debut album. They named that album Life, Love, Love, Murder. 4 words, deliberately chosen by 3 grown men to represent their collective artistic statement to the world. I'm not telling you an album title is evidence, but I am telling you it is a window. And what it shows you about the people who chose it is worth sitting with for a moment. From 2007 to 2026, Evans and Cioni have been playing together. 19 years of shared rehearsal spaces. 19 years of booking gigs, splitting expenses, coordinating schedules, reading each other's timing on a stage in front of a crowd. Here is something that musicians understand and that the rest of us tend to underestimate. A drummer and a bassist are the rhythmic foundation of every band. When they are tight, the whole band sounds tight. A drummer who has spent 19 years locked in with a bassist does not need to look over at him. He does not need a signal. He anticipates the shift before it happens. He feels the change in the tempo before the first note even lands differently. That level of synchronization does not live only on the stage. It becomes the foundation for every coordinated action those two people take together in any context. Think about what this crime required. 2 people, 2 entry points, simultaneous action, one at the front, one at the rear, pre-assigned roles, pre-agreed timing, no verbal communication during execution. That is not 2 strangers hired off a message board. That is 2 people who have been anticipating each other's moves for 19 years without needing to speak. Let me tell you what the body language experts said when they reviewed the FBI doorbell footage. They used a specific phrase: ownership behavior. The suspect did not approach that porch the way a stranger approaches an unfamiliar location. He did not slow down near the entrance to orient himself. He did not scan the porch to locate the camera. He did not hesitate at the door. He walked directly to the camera, without searching for it. He tapped the lens twice, casual, rhythmic, the way someone taps a piece of furniture they walk past every single day of their life. When tapping did not disable it, he reached into the potted plant beside the door and covered the lens with foliage. He knew that plant was there. He knew exactly where it was positioned relative to the camera. He did not find the plant. He went straight to it. Investigators call that kind of movement muscle memory, the kind your body makes in a space it has visited so many times that it stops thinking and starts running on automatic. Now, Dominic Evans is not a family member. He did not have 19 years of Friday night dinners at Nancy Guthrie's home. Tommaso Cioni did. But here is what Evans did have: a 19-year partner who knew every inch of that property. A partner who knew where every camera was mounted. A partner who knew which plant was next to the front door. A partner who could draw a floor plan of that house from memory in the dark. The person on that porch moved like someone who had been briefed on every detail of that property by someone who had walked it hundreds of times. A blueprint passed from one partner to another. This detail does not get nearly enough attention. On January 23, 2026, 9 days before Nancy Guthrie was taken, a man was captured on a Ring camera approximately 6.5 miles from her home. He was walking backward. Consumer security cameras like Ring use passive infrared sensors. The sensor goes into a low-power state until it detects body heat moving through its field. When it wakes up, there is a gap. 1 to 2 seconds before the lens adjusts, the processor engages and the connection establishes. Walk toward a camera, and those first 1 to 2 seconds capture your face as you approach. Walk backward, and by the time the camera is actually recording, all it sees is the back of your head. This person was not walking backward because he stumbled. He was physically exploiting the camera's built-in response delay, using nothing but his own body. He had studied how these specific consumer cameras work. He had learned about the sensor lag, and he was using that knowledge deliberately, in the dark, on a residential street. When a dog in a nearby yard started barking, he ran. But here is the part that should stop you cold. He maintained his backward orientation as he fled. He was moving fast, fast enough that staying backward while running risked falling. The instinct when you hear a sudden, unexpected noise is to spin toward it. Every human body has that reflex. It is not a choice, it is biology. He suppressed it. He would rather risk falling on a sidewalk than give that camera a single frame of his face. That level of discipline in an unplanned moment of stress does not come from watching a YouTube video. It comes from practice, from someone who had run this scenario in their mind enough times that the trained behavior overrode the survival reflex. 9 days later, February 1st, the same Ozark Trail backpack, the same reflective safety strips, the same build, the same height. On to Nancy Guthrie's porch, but this time, no hesitation, no testing, no backward walking. January 23rd was the test run. He walked past. He checked whether the camera captured anything worth worrying about. When law enforcement did not knock on his door the next morning, he confirmed one thing: he was invisible. By February 1st, he was not testing anymore. He was executing. I want to spend a moment on the backpack because most coverage treated it as a minor detail. It is not a minor detail. The FBI identified it as an Ozark Trail 25-litre pack. They specifically noted that this model is sold exclusively through Walmart. Walmart sells hundreds of millions of products, but the FBI called out this specific backpack by name. That means their forensic analysis was specific enough to identify the brand, the model, and the exclusive retailer. Now think about what a person planning this kind of operation chooses to carry their equipment in. This operation required planning tools, possibly restraints, definitely whatever sedative was administered to Nancy inside that home, possibly communication devices. A person who buys a specialized tactical backpack from an outdoor retailer creates a purchase record, a credit card trail, a loyalty program scan, a security camera at a checkout counter. A person who buys a $20 backpack from Walmart in cash, late at night, at a location far from their own neighborhood, creates almost nothing. That choice tells us the person carrying it understood procurement security. They understood that equipment leaves traces, and they chose equipment designed specifically to minimize those traces. That is not impulsive behavior. That is deliberate planning. And the reflective safety strips on that backpack, multiple observers noted them right away. Those strips glow under infrared cameras. They are visible from a distance in low-light conditions. A person who walked backward on a residential street specifically to exploit a camera's sensor lag definitely noticed those reflective strips, and they left them on anyway. There is one explanation for that. Those strips were left on intentionally, to make the backpack look like it was grabbed by someone careless, someone disorganized, someone impulsive. Someone who does not match the profile of a man who has spent 19 years executing precise musical timing with another person. The backpack was part of the costume, and the costume had a specific purpose. When the FBI builds a suspect profile, they look at the gear, the planning, and the execution. If the suspect had shown up in professional tactical equipment with a properly fitted holster, night vision gear, and high-quality everything, the profile would have read as educated, methodical, disciplined, trained. Someone with a technical background. That profile narrows fast. But if you deliberately assemble the cheapest possible kit, the wrong holster, the reflective strips you absolutely should have removed but did not, you build a completely different character on paper. The profilers describe a disorganized, impulsive offender, someone with no training and no discipline. And they stop looking at the methodical person 4 miles away who plans things carefully for a living. That is not stupidity, that is misdirection. The costume did exactly what it was designed to do. 2 DNA profiles, 2 men. Profile 1 was recovered from biological material found inside Nancy Guthrie's home. Profile 2 was recovered from a nitrile glove found approximately 2 miles from her house. Both profiles belong to unknown males. Neither matches Nancy Guthrie. Neither matches any member of her family. Neither matches a single one of the 19 million profiles in the FBI's CODIS database. 2 miles from the house. Someone disposed of a glove 2 miles from the scene. Think about the knowledge that choice requires. A person who panics after a crime drops the glove at the scene or in the first trash can they pass. A person who panics does not think about where biological evidence from inside a glove might land. Nitrile gloves are not designed to prevent forensic contamination. They are rated for chemical resistance. Micro-tears form under physical strain. Sweat builds inside the glove within minutes. If you are wearing nitrile gloves while physically managing an elderly woman and carrying her out of her home, perspiration breaches the material. A biology teacher who teaches forensic science concepts would know exactly that. A biology teacher would know that disposing of the gloves far from the scene is non-negotiable. And a person who knew that and still left a glove that was findable 2 miles away either made a mistake in a high-pressure moment or disposed of it in a location that seemed safe and turned out not to be. Someone found one anyway. And the FBI is running that DNA against genetic genealogy databases right now. Companies like Parabon Nanolabs and the techniques pioneered by investigator C.C. Moore do not require a hit in CODIS. They require a partial match with a distant relative, a second cousin, a third cousin. Someone who submitted their DNA to Ancestry or 23andMe without ever thinking about what that submission could one day reveal. Genetic genealogy brought down the Golden State Killer, a man who evaded law enforcement for decades, a man whose DNA was not in any criminal database anywhere. It found him anyway, because his relatives were in a consumer database. 2 DNA profiles, 2 men, and a genetic genealogy investigation that does not need either of them to cooperate. Dominic Evans spoke to the New York Times in February of 2026. He told them several things. He said he had met Nancy Guthrie exactly once, at a family Easter egg hunt in 2011. He said he found out about her disappearance through Instagram. And he said that when he found out, he reached out to Tommaso Cioni through a private direct message to offer his support. Sit with that sequence for a moment. Nancy Guthrie's disappearance was on every major television network in America. It was the top story on ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN simultaneously. Her daughter Savannah is the anchor of the Today Show. This was not a local story buried somewhere on page 6. And Dominic Evans, the 19-year bandmate of the last known person to see Nancy Guthrie alive, says he found out through Instagram, not from the television, not from a friend calling him, not from Tommaso himself reaching out. Instagram. Let that land for a second. And then his first move was not to call Tommaso, not to text him, not to reach out through any channel that would be immediately visible to the investigators who he had to know were monitoring every form of communication in and out of that household. He sent a private direct message. A national kidnapping investigation involving a journalist's mother is active. Law enforcement is pulling phone records and monitoring communications. And his instinct is to reach out through the most private, least traceable channel available to him. Investigators who examine the metadata of that communication, the timing of it, the pattern of messages between Evans and Cioni in the weeks leading up to February 1st, the frequency of their contact, and the sudden shift after February 1st, would not be reading that private message as a gesture of support. They would be reading it as something else entirely. Evans told reporters he spoke with investigators for approximately 40 minutes. 40 minutes. That is a preliminary screening interview. That is what you spend on someone when you are documenting that you spoke to them. It is not the length of a deep dive into a genuine person of interest. But here is what matters most about that 40-minute interview. Investigators do not need Evans to cooperate for the evidence that actually counts. Cell tower records do not need his cooperation. Purchase histories do not need his cooperation. Vehicle tracking data does not need his cooperation. Genetic genealogy absolutely does not need his cooperation. It needs him to have a relative who submitted their DNA to a consumer database. And statistically, Almost everyone does. Here is a detail I have not seen properly addressed anywhere. Evans told the New York Times he met Nancy Guthrie exactly once. Easter egg hunt, 2011. That was 15 years before she was taken. He is the 19-year bandmate of her son-in-law. 19 years of being connected to this family through Tommaso. 19 years of knowing about family dinners. 19 years of a partner who had walked through Nancy's front gate hundreds of times and knew that house better than almost anyone outside the immediate family. And Evans claims his entire personal connection to Nancy Guthrie is one Easter egg hunt 15 years ago. That is a very specific and very minimal claim. People make very specific and very minimal claims about their connection to a person when they have been carefully advised about what to say. Now consider the ransom demand. $6 million in Bitcoin. Not 5 million, not 10 million, not a round number that a stranger picks because they assume wealthy television personalities have access to unlimited funds. 6 million. That is a precise number, a surgical number, a number that says whoever set it knew specifically what Savannah Guthrie actually earns, knew what she could realistically access in liquid assets quickly, knew the difference between her public net worth and the amount she could actually move in a short window. A complete stranger demands 50 million because strangers think in large, round numbers when they imagine television wealth. An insider who has spent 19 years adjacent to that family's conversations lands on 6 million, because an insider knows what is actually reachable. Does Dominic Evans know Savannah Guthrie's financial reality after 19 years of being Tommaso Cioni's closest bandmate? That question does not have a comfortable answer. In February of 2026, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos held a press conference and publicly stated that the Guthrie family had been cleared. All siblings and spouses. Listen to those exact words very carefully. All siblings and spouses. Savannah Guthrie, cleared. Annie Guthrie, cleared. Cameron Guthrie, cleared. Tommaso Cioni, as a spouse, falls under that umbrella. Sheriff Nanos never named Dominic Evans in that clearance statement. Not once. Not in any subsequent press conference. Not on the record anywhere at all. And then look at what the investigation actually did after that public statement. Federal agents returned to Annie and Tommaso's home more than 5 separate times after being publicly declared clear. 5 times. They left with items in brown paper bags. Brown paper bags are used by law enforcement specifically to preserve biological evidence. They are not used during routine follow-up visits. They are not used when you are just doing paperwork. Annie Guthrie's vehicle was towed and impounded. Their septic tank was physically examined. Security cameras were removed from the property. You do not examine a septic tank belonging to people you have genuinely moved past. You do not tow the car of a grieving family member who is fully in the clear. You do not send teams to remove security cameras from the property of someone you are no longer interested in. The public statement and the investigative behavior told 2 completely different stories, and Dominic Evans, the one person most directly connected to the primary focus of that investigation, was never mentioned in that clearance at all. Not once. When you strip away everything else and look only at what the physical evidence tells us, a very specific architecture emerges from this crime. This operation required 2 things that almost never exist in the same person: First, intimate insider knowledge, the home layout, the camera system, and specifically that it was not recording. The gate, Nancy's daily routine, her medication, and the conditions it treated. Her daughter Savannah's international travel schedule for the Winter Olympics. The family's real financial picture underneath the public perception of television wealth. That knowledge cannot be acquired by watching a house from a parked car. A stranger casing that property from the street can learn when the lights go on and off. A stranger cannot learn that the Nest cameras are essentially decorative. A stranger cannot learn the specific dollar amount that represents the outer limit of what Savannah Guthrie could actually move quickly. That knowledge lives inside the family, and it lives inside people who have spent years sitting adjacent to it at dinner tables and in living rooms. Second, the physical willingness and the documented capability to enter a home at 1:47 in the morning, confront a conscious and terrified woman, control her, administer a sedative, and carry her out. An 84-year-old woman, yes, but Sheriff Nanos called her a woman of great sound mind. She did not cooperate willingly. She had to be physically managed. She had to be carried. She could not walk 50 yards on her own, which means the person who took her had to support her entire body weight through that house and out the front door. That is not something an insider with 20 years of dinner table knowledge necessarily has the documented willingness to do. But a man with documented burglary and robbery convictions does. One person provides the blueprint: intimate, architectural, financial, logistical. Everything required to plan this operation from the inside out. That person never needs to be at the scene. His entire value is the knowledge he carries. He goes home, he builds an alibi that consists entirely of not being anywhere suspicious. The operative walks through a gate that was left open for him. He approaches a camera he has been told is not recording. He moves through rooms he has been given the layout of in advance. He brings a sedative because he was told exactly what medical conditions he would be dealing with. And a 19-year musical partnership provides exactly the model of silent coordination that kind of operation requires. As of this recording, Nancy Guthrie has been missing for more than 100 days. She is 84 years old. She has a pacemaker implanted in her chest. She requires daily medication for conditions that become life-threatening without it. Her pacemaker recorded a cardiac spike at 1:47 in the morning on February 1st. The clinical signature of a conscious person who is suddenly overwhelmed with terror. Nancy was not asleep when that masked figure appeared on her porch. A person taken from deep sleep does not produce that kind of cardiac spike at the precise moment a threat appears outside the front door. Her heart confirmed she was awake, she was conscious, and she was terrified. In the minutes that followed, her heart rate stayed elevated. The rhythm showed irregularities that forensic cardiologists associate with sustained extreme emotional distress. Whatever entered that house at 1:47 did not leave quickly. It stayed, and Nancy's body recorded every second of it. Approximately 15 to 20 minutes into the 41-minute window, the accelerometer data changed in a way that stopped investigators in their tracks. The movement pattern shifted from voluntary to passive. Not Nancy walking, not Nancy moving from room to room, Nancy being transported, being carried by someone else. And the character of that movement was consistent with one specific thing: being placed inside a vehicle and driven away. And then, in the final 10 to 15 minutes before contact was lost at 2:28 in the morning, the most disturbing finding in the entire pacemaker analysis. The natural beat-to-beat variation in a conscious person's heart rate began to decrease in a specific pattern that has one clinical meaning and one meaning only: pharmacological sedation. Someone administered a drug to Nancy Guthrie in the final minutes before that pacemaker lost contact with the outside world. An 84-year-old woman with a chronic heart condition. A pacemaker keeping her heart in rhythm. And someone bought a sedative specifically for her. You do not accidentally have medical-grade sedatives on your person. You do not stumble across them. You plan for them. You research them. You acquire them specifically for this purpose. You bring them with intent. At 2:28, the connection stopped. Not because Nancy's heart stopped, because the vehicle she was in had driven far enough from her home that the bedside monitoring unit could no longer reach the pacemaker's signal. At 2:28 in the morning of February 1st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie was alive. Her heart was beating. The device inside her chest confirmed it. And the internal memory of that pacemaker has been recording every single heartbeat since that moment. Every second of everything she has experienced in these 100+ days is stored inside a device the size of a small matchbox, implanted in her chest. All of it is there, waiting. Here is the truth about where this investigation stands right now. The FBI does not hold press conferences to announce progress on an active investigation. They hold press conferences when they need something from the public. When they released the doorbell footage on February 10th, they needed tips. They needed someone who recognized that build, that moustache, that backpack. What they said publicly was the minimum required to generate those tips. What they have not said publicly is everything else. Cell tower data from the Tucson area on the night of January 31st and the morning of February 1st has been subpoenaed. That data shows every phone that connected to towers near Nancy Guthrie's home during the abduction window, including phones belonging to people who claim to have been somewhere else that night. Purchase records for Ozark Trail backpacks at Tucson area Walmart locations have been pulled. Cash purchases at Walmart are captured on store security cameras. Those cameras have footage retention policies. If that backpack was purchased recently enough, that footage still exists somewhere. And the genetic genealogy investigation is active. C.C. Moore and the team at Palabon Nanolabs have cracked cases where the suspect had no CODIS profile, using nothing more than a partial match with a distant relative. The Golden State Killer had no profile in any criminal database. Genetic genealogy found him anyway, because his relatives were in a consumer database. 2 DNA profiles from 2 unknown males sit in an FBI lab right now. Those profiles are being run against every genealogy database available to investigators. The moment a relative surfaces, the family tree gets built. The tree leads to a name. The name leads to a warrant. And warrants do not require cooperation. The FBI has not named Dominic Evans as a suspect, but the FBI also never publicly named Joseph DeAngelo as a suspect in the Golden State Killer investigation, until the day they arrested him in his driveway. The FBI matched the doorbell footage, not perfectly, not conclusively, not yet. But they built a physical profile from 44 seconds of recovered footage that points to a specific person in a specific city with a specific criminal history and a specific 19-year relationship to the family at the center of this case. Every data point in that profile matches Dominic Aaron Evans. Every single one. I am not telling you he did this. Law enforcement has not told you he did this. What I am telling you is that the evidence in this case follows a path. And that path does not lead away from Dominic Evans. It leads toward him. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. There is a device in her chest that has been counting her heartbeats since 2:28 in the morning on February 1st. That device is still counting right now as you watch this video. Time matters. If you have any information related to this case, the FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The website is tips.fbi.gov. The reward is $50,000 from the FBI. Savannah Guthrie has added $1 million of her own money on top of that. Someone knows where Nancy is. Someone always does.